Hey everyone, Ranger here. So I thought today I would do a little bit something different. Now I'm sure some of you may notice around my room that I've done a lot of art throughout the past, I want to say, 2 years. Now, as I should mention that right now I am a graphic design major student at my local campus. Now, because of that, I want part of me wants to become a really inspiring artist, not necessarily famous, but inspiring, where I can do art on certain things that are in my realm of interest. Now, of course, my interest consists of, well, dinosaurs, prehistoric animals, monsters, Godzilla, what have you. So because of that, I started to do my own art on certain monsters and dinosaurs, so that I can experiment how I can further develop to become the best artist I can be. And what you see right here is one of the very first pieces I started while I was in a bit of a mental depression, I want to say, at the time. And that is, of course, this piece that I like to call Rhino of the Past. Now, it's clear to see why it's called this because, well, the front center is a woolly rhino. Now, I wanted to categorize this video into different sections. First off, I want to talk about is inspiration. Now, where did this idea came to be? Well, it all started when I had my latest figure at the time, and that's of course the Safari Limited Woolly Rhino, which I still think by this day is one of their best prehistoric mammal figures, and it's definitely one of my favorite models in my collection right now. As you can see, that it has a really nice fur detail and all that. Now, of course, woolly rhino is a relatively well-known creature within, paleontology and prehistoric community. So I want to do a piece on, that particular animal, since, I already had a pretty good reference model to go by. Now, in terms of, how I started sketching this, simply, like I said, I had the Safari figure at the time, and I simply used that as my base model to start sketching the art here. Now, the paper that I used the piece on is known as Bristol, as you can see here. You can see size is 11 by 14 inch. This paper is pretty good if you're like a art major like me, where a lot of professors will ask you to purchase this Bristol paper, and it's not that expensive. Like, especially this size, I want to say costs around $15 to $20 at the very least. So and it has a pretty good material. Like, as you can see here, it has a really nice surface. It's not the smoothest, but it's not too rough either. So I want to say I want to say it's more on the smooth side, but not entirely smooth, but that's not entirely a bad thing. So, this kind of paper can work with acrylic paint. And as you can see, one of the material used here is crayon. Well, actually colored pencil, I should say. Yes, colored pencil is what I used on the background of this piece, but more on that later. So Bristol was the main paper I did the sketch on. Now, in terms of how I designed the woolly rhino, as you can see, if I could bring out the model again, it is mostly inspired by the Safari Limited figure here, although with some few differences. It's not, the legs positions aren't in exactly the same position, and that's mainly because I wanted my woolly rhino to not exactly be like the Safari figure. I want it to be its own unique creation. So looking at the figure, I wanted to see what elements I can use on my own woolly rhino, but trying to make it as different enough from the Safari figure. And I want to say that my sketch is a good 50-50 between what the figure looks like and what we see here. And the one of the more bigger difference would probably be the proportions. As you can see, my proportion on my woolly rhino is a little bit more I want to say cartoony per se. Like you can see that the feet are somewhat bigger when compared to the Safari figure. And I'm not trying to make, entirely all my artwork on prehistoric animals the most accurate depictions ever. I just wanted to be, a bit more expressive on how I depict, these certain animals. So, I wanted mine to be, a good representation where it does look relatively alike like whatever creature I is based on, but at the same time has its own unique creative liberties. As I say, bigger feet, and another thing is that I make the horns a bit of different colors from one another, with the black tip and whatnot. And the color is where it's mostly differentiate from the Safari figure. As you can see, the Safari figure mostly consists of, I want to say more of a lighter brown. In some areas, it's a bit of more of a chocolatey brown. And while this one also has somewhat chocolate-like brown colors, it also consists of reddish-brown colors, and if you can see on the back here, more of a tannish coating on it. So, the colors is, another difference that makes my woolly rhino a bit more unique. Now in terms of, the painting process and, what's up with the background, so I thought we would start with, what material I use. So first off, we should go over the paint I use. And most of the paint mostly consists on the woolly rhino here. Now, the paint that I use is mostly acrylic, especially if I can, because I'm actually using the box as a stand. I use most of the paint I use from this paint company known as Liquitisk or Liquid. It's hard to pronounce, but basic acrylics. That's what their line is known. Basic acrylic paint. As you can see, it's the 48 case. And it comes in a wide variety of colors, as you can see here. Of course, mostly brown, since, that's some of the main coat I use on the rhino. But, and so this set I did bought at my local arts and crafts store. And it cost at least, I want to say around $40. I know, it's not the cheapest set in the world, but it was for, the class I was assigned for. And I should mention that, the rhino piece right here, it was not made for a class. This is my own personal creation that I thought about. So just thought I put that out of the way. So I already show, that brand of acrylics that I use. And if I can get the stand in a good position again. Okay, so I put the stand back in its proper position. So yeah, I used, like I said, the Quinstiz basic acrylic. But another brand I also use in terms of acrylic paint is known as Apple Barrel. Now this brand can be widely found in your local arts and crafts store, like let's say Hobby Lobby and Michael's Arts and Crafts. Those are like some of the more major places that you can find this brand, and they're not that expensive actually. In terms of if you want to get individual paints like this one, so they individual tube can cost you around at least around the $1 mark. So, not that expensive for individual tubes. So, if you're on somewhat of a budget and want to get, specific colors, I'd say, Apple Barrel is a pretty good brand to start with. So, yeah. So, another material that I use is known as Primus Color here. Now, this brand is relatively well known if you're a major art student and you want, colored pencils that aren't necessarily Crayola like, but are more advanced. So this brand is pretty good, and a case like this, actually around the $50 mark. Again, not the cheapest brand out there, but you definitely need to start a little bit somewhere if you want to get into more advanced, art studies and all that. So, and it's actually a pretty good brand. As if I can open one of the case and show you one of the pencils here. The material on the pencil is actually pretty good. It has a bit more of a matted feel as opposed to your average Crayola crayon color pencil. So if I can get the crayon in a good frame here, if I can zoom. Yeah, as you can see, it has more of a matted feel, so it's definitely good for more advanced sketching and making more advanced art. So it's a pretty good brand if, like I said, if you're starting to go into more advanced art studies. Another material that I also use is known as the fiber Castile, which is known as Pitt's artist pen. Now, these usually come in a case, and I think I got my case for around, or I should say set. I think I got my set for around 10-ish or 12. I'm not entirely sure, and I apologize if I gave false information, but it's actually a pretty good brand for making more tinier details. But I mostly use this to help make up the shape of the rhino, both before and after I started painting on the acrylic. Before, where I could help distinguish, the different shapes of the rhino or the different lines on, where to put paint and all that. And also, retrace, the lines. Oh, yeah, retrace the lines so I can make the shape of the rhino. So we can see here, this particular pen is more on the thinner side, I should say. So, that's how, I was able to make, the outline of the rhino along with the fur, because I knew the fur would, cover up some details of the rhino shape. But at the same time, the pen doesn't exactly overbear, the rhino, as opposed to, if you were to use a bigger Sharpie pen, I should say. And speaking of Sharpie, that's actually another thing I use. So the average Sharpie is what I use on some of the lines that you can see here on the background. And I probably should have mentioned, I'm so sorry if I'm going back and forth. I should probably mention that I used the previous color pencils for the background. So what I did was, I obviously sketched out, the bottom half right here and this small little hillside, this silver color. And then also this blue background with, the colored pencils also. And, I overall like the final result that came on it. I know that, it's not, some areas are not entirely colored in, but it honestly gives it more of this old, sketchy, vintagey vibe, if that makes any sense. So I overall like the presentation. So, as I said, so with Sharpie, so, and this isn't the same Sharpie I use here because it's bronze, and I mainly use the gold and blue. But we're just going to use this as an example. So average Sharpie, permanent marker is what I use to, make some scribbles, goldish scribbles down at the bottom of the background and then on the top of the background. Also, although the top mainly uses blue Sharpie. So I added Sharpie in order to, make the piece a little bit more presentable and vibrant, along with invoking a little bit more realism, if that makes any sense. Of course, it's not entirely realistic as it's been more expressive, the overall presentation. While yes, there is the rhino here that is a real animal, but at the same time, the overall background presentation has been more vibrant and outwardly and whatnot. But I did chose cool colors for the background since it wouldn't make sense. This is an ice age animal, so it wouldn't make sense to have a more cooler background. And of course, I added, silver background to bottom since, like I said, it kind of associates with that cooler vibe that you would get from the Ice Age. Now, so the overall colors that I use on the Rhino, like I said, I use a chocolate brown, for the fur, tannish brown. And as you can see here, you can see sketches of, some of reddish brown also. And the lip area and nose is mainly this darker blackish brown, and the horns go from a black to a gray. And also the toes or hooves, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not too expertise in animal anatomy. I am so sorry, but these are a really, really darker brown. So yeah, I chose a wide variety of colors, and the way I added, some of the finer details for, the matted fur you see here is that underneath the this brown coat is actually a lighter coat of brown. Now, how I did this is that with this paintbrush right here, as you can see, I mainly used one that is more of a rounded tip, and this is a size number 6. So with this sort of paintbrush size, I easily skidded mark, the finer paint strokes all around, the rhino to help define the furry texture that the animal would have had. And as you can see, the texture goes far beyond the outline that you see on the rhino. But it wouldn't make sense, since this was a furry animal. So all the fur would have been out of the animal. So it make a whole lot of sense, and plus it adds a lot more detail. Yeah, you can kind of visualize how I would have done all of the fur detail on the rhino here. And I did use a bigger brush at one point. This isn't the exact same one, but this is known as a Fabrand size 10, where I use it to make a bigger fur detail, mainly within the center of the rhino, as you can see here, and some parts around the face also. And even, some points at the horns as well. So you can kind of visualize, how I would have done this. Oh, that would have been nice, but yeah. So you can kind of tell, with all that said and done, that the overall process was kind of long. One more material that before I move on is also known as gel roll, and this is basically a white ink pen. So what this does is that allows me to create white lines with ink. As you can see here, the ink is white as opposed to black or dark blue. Now I use this pen mainly to make the nose and the mouth here. So you can see that these are more of a white color, as like with the pen here. So yeah, that's all I need to say. So the overall time process that took me to make this. So along with me sketching the rhino with pencil, painting the rhino's body, painting the fur, painting the horns, and coloring the background with the Prima colored pencils, and adding the Sharpie back skid marks around. I want to say the overall process took me a good like adding in the time in between to, to wait for the paint to dry also, I say a good 6 or 7 hours. I think that's the realistic time frame that took me to complete the piece. So no, 6 to 7 hours is took me to make the piece here. Oh, and one more acrylic paint I also use is of course the orange one here for the eye, and the pupil is simply done with a fine tip Sharpie. But yeah, that's the last acrylic paint that I want to mention. But yeah, so the overall process took me at least 6 to 7 hours, and I didn't feel like I entirely rushed it. Like, I'm sure some of you may think that this is, somewhat rushed, but I took my time, and I did, the best art capabilities that I did. I made the Rhino a bit more unique at like as opposed to the Safari model that I have. So I'm overall proud of myself for this piece, and my hope is that that one day this piece will hopefully be sold along with other pieces I'll make in the future, and the ones that I've already have made also. So yeah, I just wanted to do this video to showcase how I made this piece, the different materials I used, and the overall inspiration that took me to make this piece a reality. So overall, I'm really proud of my piece, Rhino of the Past. It's it's definitely one of my favorites. Depicts a favorite prehistoric animal, and it definitely inspired me to make a bit more pieces. And if you guys want to see more art pieces of mine, I do have an Instagram account. Although I mainly do a figure posts on there, I'll definitely try to do a little bit more when it comes to art, especially with winter break coming up. Although winter break, I am gonna be busy getting back into the swing of things with my personal comic book crossover with the Owl House and Jurassic World. So maybe I won't have enough time to do other personal art projects, but at the very least, this video will give you an educated idea on, the kind of work I'm trying to do, at campus, and overall what I want to do in life. So, I hope that you got this video will make you guys understand, what I want in life, and, how, I'm going to be able to, make, my life, pretty successful, but at the same time, pretty enjoyable at the same time. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something from this video, and I hope that this sort of video will make you guys realize, that art is, a big part of me. It's always been a part of me. So yeah, I hope you guys, enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.